Good morning and welcome to Ask the Expert. I'm Joe Taylor. This morning, another in the ongoing series of programs presented by the Regional Early Learning Resource Center. The program, through the Northwest Institute of Research, oversees a grant from the Office of Child Development and Early Learning at the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services and the Department of Education. The goal of the program is to improve the outcomes for young children as they prepare for school. John Posa from the Early Learning Resource Center is the host of the program and is with us throughout the series. And John, I know this morning we have an old friend of yours on the line.
Yes, we do, Joe. I'm so pleased to welcome Katrina Stiller, who is originally from Brookville, or lived in Brookville for a number of years, and is now in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. Katrina is a licensed counselor, and she uses psychotherapy, intuitive readings, teaching, animal-assisted therapy, and energy healing in her work. And she also is the author of a children's book that we want to talk about. So welcome to the program, Katrina.
Thank you so much, John and Joe, for having me.
Thank you. You know, I'm so interested in the type of work that you're doing. And the first thing I wanted to ask you about is I see like there's a heading under your services, lighting your path, guiding your steps. And that is so pretty much what the type of work that you do and your approach to your counseling, isn't it?
Yes, it very much sums it up. The way that I look at the counseling services is I really do feel that my role is to help people learn how to help themselves. And when we're in the middle of whatever life has thrown at us through transition or loss or just stress, that it really does take somebody to help us find our way through.
Right.
So guiding that light, it's shining that light on how to see the end, to see where you're free from the suffering that all of us as human beings end up going through at one point in time in our lives.
Absolutely. You also, and because I know that it's partly energy healing, but you use what's called Reiki. For those folks who may not be familiar with it, it's it's a Japanese type of healing that's gotten to be fairly popular. Can you tell our listeners a little bit how you use Reiki?
So Reiki, as you said, John, is a Japanese term, and it means universal energy. So all things are energy. Our thoughts, our emotions, cars, tables, it's all made up of atoms that move in a certain structure. So when individuals come to me and, we're going through grief or loss or stress or depression or anxiety, those emotions have a structure in the body. We feel it in the body.
Right.
Like we know when we're sad because our bodies tend to feel heavy. We might show tears. And Reiki helps by helping to move that energy through our body. So as a practitioner, how I integrate it in is people will come into my office and we'll talk about whatever problems that they're dealing with. And then I may, if with their permission, I would have them lay down on a table and I would put my hands on them in various parts of their body to help move energy into that spot.
Right.
To help change the patterning that is present.
Right. Is that, I know now made me think about a couple of things, because I know you're involved in yoga, and yoga kind of like works kind of hand in hand with Reiki, doesn't it?
It's different. Yoga uses body postures to move energy through a person, where Reiki, as a practitioner, I am moving energy through that person.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. Interesting. And now, and Curtis, you have your own dog that my understanding is you trained to be a therapy dog that you use in some of your sessions. How did that all come about?
Well, Curtis, actually, how that came about was I was going through my own period in life where I had lost somebody that I loved, and I needed to have healing.
Right.
So I had adopted Curtis, and he had done so because he's part pit. He's actually a lab pit mix. So when I adopted him from the animal shelter, part of the agreement was that because he was part pit, he had to go to obedience classes.
Right.
So I took Curtis to his first obedience class, and he got first place in his class. And that's when I realized that he really could do that work. Because at first I really wasn't sure that he would be able to sit in an office all day and be calm and interact with people in that sort of, calm, non-reactive way that a dog would need to do.
Right.
So after he passed his first obedience class, it takes a year of bonding time before they'll let you sign them up for what's called Canine Good Citizen and Therapy Dog.
Right.
So through that process, we then had a number of weeks of training to make sure that he could pass a 15-point test and be non-reactive to people.
Right. And I guess he passed the with flying colors.
Well, yes, he did
Yeah.
pass. He does have a little bit of trouble sometimes with other dogs. So on that particular day, it was a beautiful thing that another woman was there who had worked with Curtis, and her dog had worked with Curtis. And so she had volunteered to do the part of the test where they had to pass each other, where two dogs had to pass each other and not have any reaction to
Right.
each other. And so he did do a great job, and he's been, fabulous. He comes to work every day now for over almost 7 years.
Oh my gosh, that's terrific. Now, curious, what type of clients, like when you use Curtis in your practice, is there a certain type of individual that are having issues where that Curtis could be more of a help than to others?
Animal lovers. I mean, the bottom line is Curtis does great with anybody who likes dogs, and he's actually done really great with people who have a fear of dogs because he helps them overcome that fear.
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah.
But I do have clients of all ages. It doesn't, from 6 on up to 96.
Wow.
And he knows how to, work his way into people's hearts.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great. As I see on your website, and of course, Katrina has her own website. So for folks listening, they can find more information about her practice. It's www.katrinastiller.com. There's a beautiful picture of you and Curtis in there. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up your children's book that you used Curtis as a character in it. Tell our folks about the book and how that all came about.
Right. Well, I was working for an agency in Pennsylvania, and I started to get a number of kids who were being referred to me for attention deficit disorder, for having anxiety, and part of that was they were having a lot of difficulty falling asleep at night. So I started working with the kids on finding ways that they could calm their bodies. And when we calm our bodies, in essence, we're also calming our minds. So our minds and our bodies are bidirectional. Whatever's happening in our minds is affecting our bodies. Whatever is happening in our bodies is affecting our minds.
Right.
So if we're having difficulty falling asleep, one of the things that we can do is we can learn to relax our bodies so that it helps put our mind to rest. So these kids were coming into my office frequently, and I was trying to think of creative ways to teach them the skills that they could use on their own at home. And the kids love Curtis. So it was a pretty easy transition to just take him, and he sleeps a lot because what else is a dog going to do in a closed office all day?
Right.
So I would take him and I would use his paws, and I would show the kids what to do with their hands. And Curtis has a really interesting way of when we're practicing breathing exercises, he will mimic the breath. So he mirrors it just on his own.
Interesting.
I don't know how he has learned to do that, but he has. So if I would practice breathing techniques with them, Curtis would all of a sudden start doing them himself, and they could watch him, and they could see his belly moving up and down.
Right.
And that is essentially how it got started. So parents then started asking me, hey, what are you doing with my child in session? You know, they're telling me about this at night when they go to sleep. Can you write this down for me? So I started writing down steps so often that I thought to myself, I really need to just, turn this into a book, because I'm writing it down so much that it just doesn't make any sense anymore. And that's how it all got started.
Oh, it's terrific. It's terrific. And for those who are interested, the book is called Curtis Gets Ready to Dream, and it's available on Amazon, and you can find more information about the book also on Katrina's website on www.katrinastiller.com.
Parents are so busy these days. Many of them, and I have to confess, back in the day I did, probably John, you did too, you look to their kid going to bed as a time after which they can have a few hours to themselves. So parents are creating a tension, and can this be transferred to the child at bedtime and make it an even more stressful situation for both? And how do parents avoid this, which is kind of, I hate to say it, with them being so busy, kind of a natural inclination to do?
Yes, you're absolutely right, Joe, and that's very insightful. That's a very insightful comment. Parents do have it becomes like a rush. We're just rushing through. Hurry up, brush your teeth, wash your face, get. It's just a quick movement that tends to happen. And really one of the best ways is to incorporate it more into, how do we prepare for bedtime? How do we start to relax? Are there things that we can turn the mind to become more present? So rather than looking at the end result of, child is in bed, task done, more of, can I be present with them as they brush their teeth? Can we practice those skills of sensory awareness in the moment of doing something? While we're in the bath, how do we teach our children to feel the water on their skin, maybe smell the soaps that are in the bathtub? And when parents can start to be in the moment with their child, they themselves will start to become more relaxed. Because in the present moment, all of those things just fade away.
Right. One of the things, excuse me, that you encourage your clients is, when they're focusing their energy, is not to expect results and to be completely healed all at once. That you emphasize it takes one tiny step at a time, and that small steps create big results. Is that sometimes...
You've done your research, John.
Yes. Is that sometimes hard for clients who are, they come to see you and they're so anxious and they think that, it's got to be a quick fix? That's got to be hard for I would think that a lot of people to accept and know that it's going to take a little bit of time.
Sure. It's human nature, right? We all want something to just quick fix.
Right.
I mean, it would be wonderful if everything was like that, but it's not. When we think about life in general, one of the analogies that I often go back to is learning to walk. And we're talking about kids, and Joe, you were talking about, being a grandfather. And when children learn to walk, they stumble and they fall a lot. But toddlers just get right back up. They just do it again. There's no judging of self. There's no, getting angry at themselves because they're not running already. They're just taking one tiny little step. And in that tiny little step, there's so much celebration. So it is going back to, reminding people the problem that we're in often, I'm not saying that tragedy can't occur and your life can change in an instant, because it does, and it's happened to me as well. But more often than not, the problems that we're in weren't created overnight.
Right.
Therefore, they're not going to be resolved overnight. And we're just learning to walk.
Yeah, absolutely. As you were explaining that, and using the analogy of the toddler and walking, and compared to an adult and having to learn something new again, I can't help but focus on the brain, and the adults have so much clutter that that kind of gets in the way of kind of clearing your mind and to focus on things that that are really important. I think that's part of it, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is remembering that we really, in essence, we really are we're still children, and we're still
Right.
learning. And if we can remove the judgment of the learning process, because as a human race, if I go back to that same analogy, as a human race, if we had the ability to judge ourselves as children, would we have ever learned to walk? No.
No, obviously
Would we
not.
have ever learned to run?
Right.
No. So we do need to remember that as adults as well, that if we can, think about it in terms of, I am just learning to walk. I can remove the judgment from myself of whatever experience I'm going through, that in the end, I'm going to persevere and have a lot more success.
Yeah.
Another reason why I do like to use Curtis is because animals don't, when you're talking about that clutter, John, that tends to be in the adult brain, animals are a really wonderful resource to look at, because they're just so happy and they're just so in the moment
Right.
most of the time. And it's because they live life through their senses. They're looking with their eyes, they're smelling with their noses, they're listening with their ears. And when we as adults practice doing that same thing, being in our senses rather than being in our heads thinking so much, we can navigate through life much more easily and with much less stress.
Kind of applying in my mind this concept to a kid falling asleep or not falling asleep. And it just occurred to me, and you correct me if I'm wrong, obviously, and I may very well be, that there's almost a judgment parents make that, you're not falling asleep quick enough. You're not somehow you're not doing it right.
Right.
You pass it along to the kid. But also with bedtime, what is so critical about a child's bedtime that can affect her or his physical and emotional well-being? I mean, it seems to me there's a lot of things going on here.
Yes, there is.
Yeah, obviously.
When you say what is so critical, I guess what I'm thinking about is the programming that happens when we sleep. We have on average about 60,000 thoughts a day. We're only aware of about 10% of those. So a lot happens even when we're sleeping in terms of brain programming, emotional programming, thought programming. When you consider, what is it that most of us are thinking about when we fall asleep at night?
Falling asleep. How come I can't fall asleep? That's what I'm thinking about. I hate to say it.
Well, I don't know about you,
Yeah.
Joe. Yeah, I think about sleeping, but I'm also thinking about 1,000,001 things, and that's where I'm getting that clutter that's preventing me from falling asleep.
Exactly. And for children, it's critical because we have a true opportunity to teach them how to calm their minds so that when they get to be older, when they get to be adults, they're not plagued with thinking about all these future-oriented things or judging themselves for whether or not they're falling asleep quickly enough or not.
Right.
Instead, they have learned how to really be in the moment and how to calm their bodies so that they're not plagued with all of those scattered thoughts that happen.
Yeah.
Because it's the thought, it's the worries about the future event. When you're in bed, when you're lying in bed and you're thinking about all the things that you have to do tomorrow, are those things that you truly have any control over in that moment?
Not when you're getting ready to go to sleep, that's for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how is that helpful for us?
Yeah.
It's just not. It's not helpful for us. So it's critical to teach children so that they don't have to suffer the same way that, say, you and I do, because that programming is so deep in us. Because whatever we're thinking about when we fall asleep, essentially, that is 6 to 10 hours of brain programming through that thought neuro pathway just keeps running and running and running and running, making that pathway deeper and deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
So if we can create a neuro pathway that is of peace, calm, relaxation, rather than worry, 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 then even when we're awake, we're going to have a much easier time feeling relaxed, calm, and at ease.
Yeah, and I think, as I'm listening to you, especially as it relates to children, and Joe brought it up, it's, kind of like, it's like making judgments. And when we pass that along, especially to children at a young age, to feel like they're constantly being judged, you almost like in everything they're going to do, they're going to kind of wonder if they're doing this right or they're doing that right. When there are things that they just, children just adapt to naturally on their own without any judgment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're very right, John. And I start to see it with, the preteens that I have, the teenagers. A number of them do come in with this very black and white thinking in terms of whether this is right or whether it's wrong. And there are very few things in life that are that black and white. There's so much gray. And I agree with what you're saying, that we have a tendency to pass that on to them, and they then can adopt this attitude that they themselves are bad. I also think it's about disciplining. And when when a child may have this misbehaved, there can sometimes be this, that was bad. No, don't do that. Bad girl, bad boy. And I know that parents certainly don't intend for that language to come out.
Right.
But it's just so easy to kind of fall into that.
Right.
So rather than, correcting the behavior and telling the child that they love them and, that they're still a good person, there is this tendency to make things very black and white.
Yeah, that's for sure. Hey, Katrina, we only have about a minute left. Why don't you tell us about what your hopes and dreams are and what's next on the horizon for you?
My hopes and dreams. Well, that's a loaded question.
I know.
I actually am. I'm hoping to write an adult-oriented book, and I've been doing a lot of workshops and trainings, and so hopefully I'll be doing some things in New York City in the next year or two coming up. So I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, that's fantastic. We've been talking with Katrina Stiller, licensed counselor, and she uses psychotherapy, animal-assisted therapy, and energy healing in her work. Her website is www.katrinastiller.com. She's also the author of a children's book on how parents can teach their children to go to sleep. It's called Curtis Gets Ready to Dream. And that is available on Amazon, or you can find out more information on that book from Katrina's website. Katrina, thank you so much for being on the program. It was just so informative, and we really appreciate having you. Will you come back?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
My pleasure.
And good luck with your work that you're going to be going in the trainings in the future.
Thank you so much, John and Joe. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that's our program for today. We'll be back in 2 weeks at this same time. In the meantime, you can go online to learn more at papromiseforchildren.com. For John Posa and the Early Learning Resource Center, I'm Joe Taylor. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.